Now, this is all theory. We want to show you Finternet in action. We're actually going to demonstrate something that combines the power of tokenization and agentic AI and show it working for a real person on the ground. So with that, I'd like to welcome the grand wizard of Finternet, or the curator, or the guy leading the initiative, Siddharth Shetty, who will give you a demonstration of the Finternet in action.
Thank you.
He's taller than you think.
Thank you so much, Nandan. It's always so inspiring going after you, especially because over the last year, as we've spent time diving deeper into these underlying trends of tokenization and AI, the conviction that we have that this fundamentally changes how people transact in a digital economy, because you move away from spending a lot of time doing API integrations, bilateral contracts, all of that complexity, to a lot more abundance where the rails are taken care of, and you just focus on the flow. So what we really wanted to do today is bring this to life. And this is involved across ecosystem of lenders, financial institutions, and developers. So let's dive straight in. So let me open up the Finternet application. And fundamentally, this is an imagination in our lens of when you think about tokenization or tokenizing any type of asset, regulated assets like money, securities, registered assets like a vehicle or property, attested assets like gold, silver, or energy resources, tokenization fundamentally allows you to drive execution of that transaction, which means I can complete it in real time, programmatically. But with AI added in, what that fundamentally allows you to do is drive the consumer experience, the discovery process. And these really go hand in hand, right? So if you build an AI agent, at the end of the day, if the underlying asset's not tokenized, you'll have to go back to the bank branch and paperwork. So let's dive straight in. What I'm going to do is take you back in time. Assume you were here in March 23. As Nandan spoke about, Sachin Patil's an independent contractor. He is now participating in the early days of the Finternet. And we're going to show you a flow where he opens a Finternet account, proves himself through his skilling credentials, upskills himself, gets access to a job, and goes on to get actually a home loan, an affordable home loan in real time. And then how the back end of this gets enabled. So let's go straight in. So my details are already pre-filled in this case. I go ahead, I create an identity. And so everyone then gets access to fundamentally a Finternet address. And that address space on the internet allows you to hold your identities, your credentials, or any type of asset that you have. And as Nandan shared, fundamentally what we're doing is making these identities, credentials, assets verifiable, so anyone else in the world can verify authenticity, provenance, ownership behind this, and making it transactable, so you can transfer it both in a financial sense, like me transferring money to you, or also in a non-financial sense, like me transferring ownership of a property record to you. So given that India has advanced digital infrastructure like DigiLocker, I can start to import credentials from there and build up my initial profile. Once I've done that and done the base document collection, the way we see this bridging into the real world is especially as you imagine now higher value assets coming in. Let's say property. If I'm transferring ownership of a property, I may even do physical verifications to address oftentimes the social engineering attacks that come in. And that's where biometrics, or what are called proofs of personhood, come in. We'll now go on to link other financial accounts that Sachin Patil has. And out here, what's happening is Sachin's linking his bank accounts, investment accounts, and tax accounts. And this is not just linking to access data, but it's fundamentally linking to also enable transactions. So think of it as read access, but also write access that gets enabled. And so we will move to a world where, if you think of how assets are represented today, Nandan mentioned pull out that 500 rupees, but because of UPI, none of you have it in that pocket. But that was a token that you had in your control. And when we digitized that financial system, that token was now sitting on some ledger. And with tokenization, you'll move to a world where every individual has their own ledger, and that's basically what you're seeing represented here. Now, based on this, obviously, the AI agent can go on to make recommendations to me that says, if I go on to sign up for upskill myself, so Sachin's an independent excavator operator, if he upskills himself into e-excavators, if any of you are in skilling, it typically ends up doubling your income. And so this is basically the recommendations that are given to Sachin. So he decides, he goes ahead, enrolls in the course, applies. This is along with the National Construction Academy, and he participates. Okay, we'll put this in. And so in this process, essentially, his verified credentials are then shared with the National Construction Academy. He has the ability to now participate in the course. He gets it done, completes the course. We are 6 months later. You can see his post-completion of that course. He now has the e-excavator certificate in his wallet. So basically what's happening is all the milestones one goes through over the period of life is essentially credentialized, and a proof is created and put back into that individual's wallet. And so against this, he decides to now access jobs. And because he has verified data, it's much easier to proceed with the entire job process. And now, as he applied and spent the last 2 years working as an e-excavator operator, and he saw a growth in his income, he decides, hey, why don't I start accessing potentially an affordable home loan? And the question I'll ask to all of you in the audience out here is, how many of you actually own a physical property? Raise your hand. And keep your hand raised. No, keep your hands raised. How many of you think that process was as smooth as UPI? If it was as smooth, put it down. So essentially, everyone's hand continues to remain raised, right? And so when we think of different types of assets, the same in the investment side. How many of you would like to purchase a property, but purchasing a property is really expensive today? And so there's no way you can often, like in my case, I can't purchase a property in Bombay, but you would like to participate in the economic growth, maybe purchase a fractional unit. How many of you would like to purchase, say, a fractional unit of a property? A lot of members of the audience, right? And so what you're going to see here is essentially Sachin Patil getting access to that in real time. So he looks at a set of properties. Vedanta Residency is one of them. True Home Finance is a lender on this ecosystem. He goes ahead, applies for this loan, given his increase in income. His various financial data and other credentials are shared with the lender. And in real time, the underwriting is done against the different data packets, and the loan goes on to then be sanctioned. And so what you see here essentially is the loan being sanctioned, and traditionally these processes take about a month. So I decide to go ahead, the sanction letter looks okay, approve it. And now in the back end, what's happening is a loan token is generated along with the property token. And so the property token can be locked because obviously I can't use the same property for another loan. And the loan token is useful because that builds up my credit history. And we won't get into the rest of the flows, but you can imagine now if I have a property token, I can use this to sell it eventually once I pay off my loan. I can add nominees, which can be done in a completely programmatic way. For example, we've been envisioning that you may have an AI agent that creates a will for you, and if the asset is tokenized, you can execute that will programmatically. So let's quickly go through a recap of what happened. Sachin brought together his credentials into a wallet, applied for a job, upskilled himself, got access to affordable home loan financing. But how can it be so simple? So let's quickly go through, in the next minute to two, a quick view of what happened on the back end of that, right? So you had a builder, Arat Builders. They decided that they had a property, Vedanta Residency, that they wanted to make available. So using approved project financing, which was basically a way to do diligence on both the entity that's constructing the project, the land and all of that, along with diligence of the borrower, you brought both of these together. And this is important, especially as India starts to develop its securities market, where today, it's quite primitive because you don't have verifiable data. And so people send manual agents, human beings, to verify does such and partial even exist or not. So I'll show you a quick overview of what happened in the back end, and then you'll hear from Nandan on the rest of what we're doing. So Arat Builders on their dashboard basically has the ability to seamlessly tokenize the property that they're constructing. Once they've tokenized that property, they can request third-party auditors, attesters, to actually verify all the provenance behind that and submit those proofs. And that's very critical for lenders. Oftentimes today, construction contractors and companies have to go and form bilateral relationship with lenders. This inverts the entire equation. So he got the attestations. He now decides to send it to a set of lenders in real time for them to review, underwrite, and approve the entire project. And then on the back end of that, because the underlying asset was tokenized, and I'm getting a bit technical here for anyone of you that are interested on the more financial aspects of this, you had the ability to create a verifiable security. And so you have Sachin Patil here with all the borrower profile data verified. That can then be added into a common loan pool that goes on to be created. And this loan pool can then be shared with an investor downstream. And so this basically brings together a lot of the requirements around observability, supervision, which is absent in many of these economies and flows today. So that's a quick overview. Thanks, all of you, and back to you, Nandan.
So we know that global momentum is building. In the US, for example, they have the Genius Act, with which they're trying to create a framework, a regulation that has been passed by Congress on stable coins. Around the world, in Singapore, in EU, there are all kinds of regulations coming. In some countries, there are specialized regulators, like in UAE, to deal with new technologies. And across the world, people are doing global initiatives and pilots. NPCI themselves will talk about something they've done. So we are seeing now an increasing interest in using this technology and a combination of tokenization and AI to get something done. But Finternet is a way of doing this strategically, holistically, in a structured way for all kinds of assets, high performance, at the same time within a regulatory envelope. And this comes from our learnings of the last several years on how to build at scale, how to build reliably, how to work with regulators, and so on. And this is now growing as a global phenomenon, and you'll see many, many things happening globally. So 2023 was when we started the journey. This is an early picture of the people, myself, Pramod, Siddharth, and Augustine, who at that time was the chairman of BIS, when the idea was launched. In 2024, we came here and we spoke about the playground, and we had a limited set of partners. You can see the names down there, JustPay and Solana and so forth. Today in 2025, this has grown dramatically. You can see the number of people who have come on board this movement. We have 10 cohorts in 8 sectors. We have 30 ecosystem partners and operating in 4 continents. So this is an idea which is going global, whether it's in India, Singapore, New York, San Francisco, or in Switzerland. So you can see the gradual expansion of what's happening. And we think in 2026, we will be live. If the GFF guys invite us back, I don't know whether they'll invite us back. If they invite us back, we will have live examples of Finternet in multiple sectors, in multiple countries, actually delivering value, and the business models will emerge, the commercial models will emerge, so people are going to build great companies on that. So if you want to join the Finternet movement, be part of the build, here's a QR code for that, and I hope you enjoyed the presentation. Thank you very much.